All right, ready to dive in? We're tackling Lincoln wheat pennies, but not just any wheat pennies. We're focusing on the years 1909 to 1919.
Ah, yes, a fertile ground for collectors indeed.
It might seem like pennies, really? What's so exciting about pennies? But trust me, this era is packed with key dates, minting errors, and some pretty cool varieties that can be worth way more than just 1 cent.
You hit the nail on the head when you say variety, because what's fascinating is how these seemingly minor details, like a mint mark that's a little off or a double image, even a tiny little crack in the die, can mean the difference between a common penny and a valuable collectible.
It's the thrill of the hunt, isn't it? You're sifting through a pile of pennies and you just never know what you might find. And the best part, it's pennies. You don't need a huge budget to start collecting. It's accessible to everyone.
Right, and that's part of the appeal.
Now, before we get too deep into the weeds here, we should probably mention that with copper coins, condition plays a huge role in their value.
Absolutely. Copper coins, they come in a range of colors, from brown to red-brown to a beautiful, vibrant red.
Oh, yeah, that fiery red.
The redder the coin, the better its condition, and typically the higher the price tag.
Makes sense. So for this deep dive, we'll be focusing on values you might see in circulated condition. So think well-loved pennies with a bit of wear and tear, the kind you might actually find in circulation.
Exactly.
All right, so let's kick things off with 1909, often called the King of Lincoln cents.
And this king has a crown jewel, the 1909 SVDB.
The 1909 SVDB, the one everyone's after.
Ah, yes. The VDB stands for Victor D. Brenner, the designer of the Lincoln cent.
So he put his initials right there on the coin. Bold move.
Bold indeed. He placed his initials on the reverse of the coin, but they were considered way too prominent for the time.
So people weren't too happy about seeing VDB on their pennies.
You could say that.
What happened?
Well, the public outcry was swift, and just 3 days after its release, the Mint decided, nope, got to remove those initials.
They pulled the plug that fast.
They did, making the 1909 SVDB one of the rarest and most sought-after Lincoln pennies out there.
So I'm guessing this one's worth a pretty penny, no pun intended.
Even in good condition, a 1909 SVDB can fetch over $1,000.
Wow.
Of course, with such high value, there are always counterfeiters lurking about, so it's important to be very careful.
Counterfeits. Ugh, how can you tell if a 1909 SVDD is the real deal?
Pay close attention to the shape and placement of the letters.
Okay.
Counterfeiters often get those details wrong, so you'll want to consult reputable sources and compare your coin to verified examples.
Do your research. Don't get fooled by a fake crown jewel.
Exactly that. And even if you don't find a VDB, don't dismiss the 1909S without the initials altogether.
Right.
It's still a key date, especially in better condition. Plus, there's another exciting variety from 1909 to look out for, the 1909 double die reverse.
A double die, now we're talking.
Now things are getting interesting.
So what exactly is a double die? It sounds cool,
That
but
is pretty cool.
lay it on me.
A double die happens when the die that's used to strike the coin is itself doubled, creating a ghost image effect on the design.
So it's like the mint accidentally hit copy and paste on part of the design.
You got it.
So on the 1909 double die reverse, it's
Yeah.
on the reverse. Where should we be looking for this ghost image?
Grab your magnifying glass and focus on the lettering, especially around the word states.
States, all right.
You'll notice a slight doubling or thickening of the letters if it's a genuine double die.
Gotcha. So it's all about those tiny details, but how is that different from what's called strike doubling?
Great question. It's easy to confuse the two, but strike doubling happens when a coin is struck multiple times, slightly out of alignment.
Oh, okay.
This can also create a doubled effect, but it looks different from a true double die.
So with double dies, it's the die itself that's the problem. Whereas with strike doubling, it's an issue with the striking process.
You got it.
That makes sense. All right. 1909, you've been amazing. What about 1910? Any hidden treasures lurking in that year?
Now, 1910 is where we flip the script a bit.
Oh.
Collectors often get laser focused on the head side of the coin,
Right.
but the reverse, the tail side, can be just as exciting.
Oh, so true. We can't forget about the tail side.
Absolutely.
So what should we be looking for on the reverse of the 1910?
There's a 1910 double die reverse.
Another one?
Yep. Focus on the lettering again, this time the E, P, and L of E pluribus unum.
Okay, got it. EPL. Looking for any thickening or doubling in those letters.
Exactly.
Reverse, check. Anything else from 1910 we should know about?
Yes. The 1910S repunched mint mark, or RPM.
RPM. That sounds like something out of a car manual. What's an RPM when we're talking pennies?
Picture this. A mint worker is diligently punching the mint mark S for the San Francisco Mint onto the coin die, and then whoops, they slip up and punch it in the wrong spot, or maybe just too lightly.
Oh no, a minting mishap. What happens then?
Well, they try to fix it, right? So they punch the mint mark again, but this leaves a trace of the original error.
So it's like a little oops moment frozen in time.
You could say that.
And these oops moments, they can be worth money.
Absolutely. These tiny imperfections are highly prized by collectors.
I love it. It's like finding a secret little message on a penny.
Exactly. It reminds us that even in a process as precise as minting, human error can lead to something unique and valuable.
I like that. Okay, we've covered 1909 and 1910. What about 1911? Does it hold up to its predecessors?
1911 brings us a semi-key date and a really fascinating variety called a retained cut.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Semi-key date, retained cut. Break it down for me.
Let's start with the semi-key date. Even without any errors, some years are more valuable simply because fewer coins were produced.
Okay.
These lower mintage coins are naturally scarcer today.
Makes sense.
The 1911S minted in San Francisco is a perfect example.
So even a regular 1911S could be worth holding on to.
You got it.
What about that 1911S over SRPM, another RPM?
Another RPM, and this one has an extra twist. The retained cut. Imagine the die that strikes the coins is starting to crack.
Oh, no.
A retained cut is a crack that actually stays in place and becomes a permanent part of the die.
So every coin it strikes will have that same mark.
Exactly. It's like a battle scar on the die itself.
That's a great way to put it.
And with the 1911 S over S RPM, this retained cut runs from rim to rim on the reverse of the coin.
Wow, so we've got a double-punched mint mark and a die work on one coin. That's a lot to look for.
It is, but
Yeah.
that's part of the fun, isn't it? It's like solving a puzzle, uncovering these hidden details that make one penny stand out from millions of others.
I love it. All right, let's move on to 1912. What hidden treasures await us in this year?
Well, 1912, a year etched in history. It was the year the Titanic made its tragic end, Arizona became a state, and Woodrow Wilson was elected president.
Wow, what a year. It feels almost surreal holding a penny from 1912 knowing what was happening in the world that year.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And numismatically speaking, we've got another semi-key date, the 1912S, with a lower mintage, making it a pretty valuable find, especially in good condition.
Another one to watch for. And I'm guessing, similar to the 1910S and the 1911S, there's also a 1912S over S RPM to look out for.
You would be correct.
All right, so we've got our semi-key date and our RPM. What about 1913? Any hidden gems from that year?
1913 is a bit quieter in terms of major varieties. There aren't any widely recognized double dies or RPMs.
So 1913, not as much to hunt for.
Correct, but some collectors like to build complete year sets.
Yeah,
So even a common 1913 penny has its place.
I could see that. But 1914, now there's a year with a story to tell.
1914 brings us a key date shredded in a bit of mystery, the 1914D.
Okay, a mystery. I'm all ears.
Minted in Denver, it had a very low mintage, making it extremely valuable in any condition.
Sounds like a good one to find.
It is.
But you said there's a mystery.
The mystery lies in the D, mint mark itself.
The D.
You see, counterfeiters, they know about the 1914D's value, so they often try to alter the mint marks of other pennies to create fakes.
Oh, no. So how can we tell if a 1914 D is the real deal?
There are specific characteristics to look for.
Okay, like what?
A genuine D will have a very distinct diamond shape within the curve of the letter,
Diamond shape, got it.
so you really need to scrutinize that D mint mark.
Any other tips for avoiding those 1914 D fakes?
Always compare your coin to reputable sources and images, and if something seems off, get a second opinion from an experienced collector or a dealer.
Okay.
They can help you avoid a costly mistake.
Great advice. I'd much rather be safe than sorry, especially when we're talking about such a valuable penny.
And agree more.
All right, we've navigated the first 5 years of our deep dive, and I have to say it's been quite a journey already. What are some of the highlights that stand out to you so far?
You know, for me, it's that contrast between the boldness of the 1909 SVDB and the subtlety of the 1909 double die reverse.
Interesting.
One just screams for attention, the other one whispers its secrets to those who know where to look.
I love that. It's a good reminder that value can be found in the most unexpected places.
It can?
Sometimes it's the loud, proud coins that catch our eye, and other times it's the quiet ones, the ones with hidden details that capture our imagination.
Exactly.
But I'm ready for more. What treasures await us in the years 1915 to 1919?
Well, let's just say that double dies and RPMs continue to be a recurring theme.
Oh.
But there are a few surprises in store.
Ooh, I like surprises.
So you ready to delve into the remaining years?
Absolutely. Bring on the pennies.
Okay, so We're picking back up with 1915.
1915, right.
And right away, we've got a couple of familiar friends. The 1915D double die reverse and the 1915D over D RPM.
It seems like double dies and RPMs were pretty common back then. You'd think the mint workers would have gotten the hang of it after a while.
You'd think so, wouldn't you? But
Yes.
I guess it just goes to show that even with the best technology, mistakes can happen.
And for collectors, those mistakes can be pretty exciting.
Absolutely. It adds to the thrill of the hunt.
Speaking of which, let's zoom in on that 1915D double die reverse. Where's the doubling most noticeable on this one?
You'll find the most prominent doubling on the reverse, especially underneath the L in Liberty.
The L, okay.
However, there's a bit of a catch with this one. A lot of people actually mistake damage to the L for doubling.
Oh, so we need to be careful with this one.
We do. It's important to be able to distinguish genuine doubling from damage.
So how can we tell if it's genuine doubling or just a case of a penny that's seen better days?
That's where those die marks come in.
Die marks, right.
Remember those accidental marks on the die that we talked about earlier? Genuine double dies will often have specific die marks associated with them.
So it's like a fingerprint for the coin.
Exactly. It helps to distinguish a true error from just plain old damage.
So we need to match up the die marks on our coin to the known die marks of the 1915D double die reverse.
Precisely.
So it's really helpful to have good references.
It is. Variety guides, online databases, those can be incredibly helpful.
All right, resources, check. Now, what about the 1915D over D RPM? Anything specific we should be looking for there?
With the 1915 D over D RPM, you'll see remnants of that original D mint mark punch. Just slightly off center from the corrected D.
Got it.
And as always, keep an eye out for those telltale die marks. They can be the key to confirming its authenticity.
Okay, die marks are our friends. Got it. Let's move on to 1916. What do we have in store for this year?
1916 brings us another double die reverse, this time on the 1916P.
1916P, okay.
And here's the interesting part. Even in circulated damaged condition, this variety can still hold significant value.
So even a beat-up penny can be a winner.
Absolutely.
I love that. Gives me hope for all those pennies at the bottom of my purse.
It should.
So what makes the doubling on the 1916P double die reverse so, I guess, obvious, even in rough shape?
The doubling on this one is pretty dramatic.
Okay.
You'll see it most prominently on the lettering of E pluribus unum, especially on the E, P, and L. They'll have this noticeable thickness that's hard to miss.
So even if the coin's a little rough around the edges, that doubling should still be pretty apparent. Awesome. And along with the double die reverse, we also have the 1916 S over S RPM to look out for.
That is correct.
Another RPM for the collection. All right, what about 1917? Any exciting finds in that year?
1917 is a banner year for double dies.
Oh.
We have two notable ones, a double die obverse and a double die reverse.
Ooh, double the fun. Which one's the more valuable of the two?
The 1917 double die obverse is the real star of the show.
Okay.
It's a major variety, and the doubling is pretty dramatic, even in rough condition.
So what should we be looking for specifically on the obverse of the 1917 double die obverse?
You'll see a clear split or separation in the lettering, especially around Lincoln's beard and the word liberty.
It's pretty hard to miss.
It is.
Okay, sounds amazing. What about the 1917D double die reverse? Is it as dramatic as its obverse counterpart?
The doubling on the 1917D double die reverse is much more subtle. You might need to look a little closer for that one.
Okay, a little more subtle, a challenge. What about 1918? Anything notable from that year?
1918 is a bit more subdued. No widely recognized double dies or RPMs to get too excited about.
No double dies or RPMs.
Not any that are super well known. There are always minor varieties that might appeal to specialized collectors, but nothing as dramatic as the 1917 double dies.
All right, I guess not every year can be a blockbuster for penny varieties.
Exactly.
Okay, let's wrap up our deep dive with 1919. What varieties should we be on the lookout for in this final year?
1919 brings us back to familiar territory with a double die obverse and an S over S RPM.
All right, so double dies and RPMs are making a comeback for the grand finale. What's special about the 1919 double die obverse?
This one's interesting because the doubling is much easier to see on a higher grade coin.
Oh.
So if the coin is heavily worn or damaged, the doubling might be harder to detect.
So condition is key with this one.
It is. A well-preserved coin will really showcase those double details.
Good to know. And what about that 1919 S over S RPM? Any unique features there?
The 1919 S over S RPM exhibits those classic characteristics of an RPM. Remnants of the original S punch, slightly offset from the corrected S.
Subtle but important details.
Exactly.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here, all sorts of key dates, double dies, RPMs. But before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to touch on something that often gets overlooked, but it's crucial for any coin collector: grading.
You're absolutely right. Understanding how to grade a coin is so important, especially when you're dealing with potentially valuable varieties like the ones we've been discussing.
So, for our listeners who might be new to this whole coin grading thing, where do they even begin?
Well, the first step is to familiarize yourself with different grading scales that are used in numismatics.
Grading scales, all right.
The Sheldon scale,
Hmm.
which ranges from 1 to 70, is the most widely used in the United States.
Okay, 1 to 70, got it.
A grade of 70 represents a perfect coin,
Perfect.
and a grade of 1 means a coin that's barely even recognizable.
70 is perfection, and 1 is, well, not so much.
Pretty much,
But how do you determine where a coin falls on that scale?
it's a combination of factors: the amount of wear on the coin,
Right.
the presence of scratches or any damage, the overall luster, and even the eye appeal.
So it's not just about how much wear and tear a coin has, but also how aesthetically pleasing it is.
You got it.
That makes sense. A coin can be pretty clean, but if it's dull or has distracting marks, that's going to affect its overall appeal.
And that, in turn, affects the grade and its value.
So grading is almost like a beauty contest for coins.
You could say that.
But a beauty contest with very specific criteria, I imagine.
It does, and learning those criteria takes time, practice, and a keen eye for detail.
Are there any resources you'd recommend for people who want to learn more about how to grade coins accurately?
Absolutely, there are a lot of great grading guides out there, both in print and online.
Okay.
The American Numismatic Association, or ANA, has some fantastic resources, and there are websites like PCGS Coin Facts that provide detailed information and images of coins in different grades.
Great. So we've got our magnifying glass, our variety guide, now our grading guide. What else should we keep in mind as we embark on our penny hunting adventures?
One thing that's often overlooked, but incredibly important, is proper storage.
Ah, storage, right? We don't want our precious pennies getting all messed up after all the effort we put into identifying and grading them.
Exactly.
What are some best practices for storing our coin collection?
The golden rule is to avoid storing your coins in harsh environments.
Harsh environments, okay.
Extreme temperatures, humidity, exposure to chemicals, all of that can wreak havoc on your collection over time.
So no storing our pennies in the attic or the basement.
Probably not the best idea. A cool, dry place is ideal.
Cool and dry, got it.
And when it comes to actually holding the coins, you have various options: coin albums, folders, individual coin holders.
And I'm guessing it's important to choose materials that are, what's the word, archival quality.
Absolutely. You want to look for materials that are acid-free and inert, meaning they won't react chemically with the metal.
Right, we want to preserve those pennies.
You want to protect your investment, make sure that your collection stays in top condition for years to come.
That's great advice. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Key dates, varieties, grading, even storage. It's been an incredible journey through the world of Lincoln wheat pennies.
It really has.
But I have to ask, out of all the pennies we've talked about, is there one that stands out to you the most? A particular variety or a story that really captures your imagination?
You know, the one that always sticks with me is that 1911 S over SRPM with the retained cut.
Oh, yeah, that one's a good one.
It's just such a fascinating combination of errors. It really speaks to the precision and, at times, the imperfections of the minting process.
I love that one too. It's like a little time capsule.
It is.
Preserving this moment in history when a mint worker made a mistake, tried to fix it, and unknowingly created a coin that would be so highly sought after.
It's amazing, isn't it?
It is, and it's a good reminder that these coins aren't just pieces of metal, they're tangible links to the past, each with their own unique story to tell.
I like that. Tangible links to the past.
So to our listeners, we encourage you, grab your magnifying glass, your favorite beverage, and settle in for a little numismatic exploration.
You never know what treasures might be hiding in that old coin jar or that box of pennies in the attic.
And as you embark on your own coin collecting adventures, I want you to keep this in mind. What other hidden stories are waiting to be uncovered in the world of numismatics?
That's a great question to ponder.
Happy hunting, everyone, and remember, every penny has a story waiting to be discovered.
Until next time.
It really is amazing when you think about it, that something as small as a penny can hold so much history, you know?
It really is.
And intrigue. Who knew there were so many secrets hiding in those copper coins?
It's the enduring appeal of numismatics.
It is.
These coins, they're tangible connections to the past, and every single one has a story to tell.
Speaking of stories, I think it's fascinating how the design of the Lincoln cent itself has evolved over time.
Right.
I mean, we've been focused on those wheat pennies from 1909 to 1919, but the Lincoln cent has a rich history that goes way beyond those years.
Absolutely. It's the longest running design in U.S. coinage history. Did you know that?
Really? The longest?
First introduced in 1909, and it's still in production today,
Wow.
though with some pretty significant changes along the way.
That's right, like the fact that it's not a wheat penny anymore.
Right.
So what happened to those iconic wheat stalks on the back?
Well, in 1959, they decided to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth
Oh, okay.
by replacing the wheat reverse, which is what gave those pennies their nickname, with a design featuring the Lincoln Memorial.
Makes sense. I mean, such a pivotal figure in American history. It's fitting that he'd be honored with something as grand as the Lincoln Memorial,
It is.
a powerful symbol of his legacy.
Absolutely. And it reflects how our ways of commemorating Lincoln and his impact on the nation have kind of, evolved,
It's incredible how a simple coin can hold so much meaning.
isn't it?
It really is. So, for anyone who's interested in exploring the full history of the Lincoln cent, what resources would you recommend?
Oh, there are countless resources available.
Like what?
Books, articles, online databases, even museum exhibits dedicated to numismatics.
Oh, wow.
You can actually trace the evolution of this design and its connection to American history and culture.
Sounds fascinating.
It is.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. Key baits, varieties, grading, storage, even the broader historical context of the Lincoln cent.
We have.
It's been an incredible journey.
It has.
But I have to ask, is there anything else that stands out to you? A particular story, a fun fact, anything you'd like to share before we wrap things up?
I just want to emphasize that the 1909 Dace VDB
Oh, yes.
is truly a numismatic treasure, so if you ever come across one, cherish it.
That's great advice.
It's a piece of history.
It is, and it's a valuable one at that.
Absolutely.
Well, on that note, we've reached the end of our Lincoln Wheat Penny Deep Dive.
We have.
It's been a pleasure exploring these fascinating coins with you.
Likewise.
To our listeners, thank you for joining us on this numismatic adventure,
We hope you enjoyed it.
and we hope you'll join us again for our next deep dive into the world of coins.
Until then, happy collecting, everyone.